The meta is in kind of an interesting spot right now, where Guardian Dragapult have been able to control the pace of games and play as slow as they would like, but I think we're getting to a point where they're going to need to adapt, and that's because decks like Zoroark, Raging Bolt, and this Joltik box can really take advantage of slow games. This deck is pretty straightforward. We're trying to go second and use this Joltik's Jolting Charge attack that says we can search our deck for up to 2 lightning and 2 grass energy and attach them to our Pokemon in any way we like. This works out perfectly in the meta because most of the time our opponents are not going to be attacking on their second turn anyway, and even if they do, if they're just forced to knock out this Joltik, it really doesn't matter because it's going to put them on odd prizes and then we'll never bench another single prize Pokemon for the rest of the game, so it's effectively like they never even took a knockout. And whenever I can, I try to attach either grass or lightning energy to the Joltik because we do have a single copy of this Galvantula in the deck that for grass colorless does 50 plus 80 more damage if we have a lightning energy attached to it. And then it also has an ability that says it does 50 more damage to Pokemon that have an ability. So if we can get either a grass or a lightning on the Joltik, we can be threatening this attack at any point in the game if our opponent doesn't knock out our Joltik, which most of the time they're not going to want to because of the odd prize thing that I explained earlier. Now 4 energy might not seem like enough, especially when we're using attacks like Iron Hands, but we do have 4 Crispin in here to keep our energy going, as well as an EXP share. And a vast majority of the time, 1 Jolting Charge is going to be enough to get us through the game, because we can take 2 to 4 prizes with Iron Hands typically, and then just take our last 2 prizes with Bloodmoon Ursaluna, or we can just take the 2 prizes with Iron Hands while building up a Pikachu and take 2 prizes with that, and then finish out the game with Bloodmoon. Energy acceleration probably was my main concern at first, but after playing the deck, it really is not a big deal. As long as we get off the Jolting Charge, we're typically going to be just fine. And this really is going to be a prize mapping based deck. There's not too much sequencing stuff with the deck. Like there's a couple things, like if we can thin our hand down and use Mew before Fezandipiti, we're going to want to use that. And then of course obvious things like Super Odd before Crispin if we're ever in a situation where we don't have 2 different types of energy in the deck, and thinning out our deck with Miraidon and stuff before Pokégear. I think those are going to be the main things as far as that goes, but prize mapping is really going to be the most important part because like I said, we kind of have semi-limited energy acceleration, so we're really going to want to be taking 2 prizes with each of our attacks, and with the different attackers that we have in the deck, that's usually very doable. Like I found myself a lot of games choosing to go second, nest balling for Miraidon to get like Iron Hands and Pikachu, as long as I already have a Joltik in the active, of course, and then trying to build up the Iron Hands and Pikachu so that I can take 2 prizes on Evolving Basic and then use Pikachu to take 2 prizes and then just kind of wait the game out until I can finish off the game with Bloodmoon, and that has been working pretty well. We can also put extra energy on our Pikachu against decks that aren't going to be able to get around its ability, because of course the attack says we only have to discard 3 energy, so we can even build up a psychic energy on it if we want and just discard that with the attack. And if we can ever get 6 energy on it against a deck like Goldengo that can't get extra damage onto the Pikachu to knock it out, we're pretty much guaranteed to take 4 prizes with just our 1 Pikachu, which is really nice. We also have the Gravity Mountain in here to combine with Pikachu. Ideally, we wouldn't ever have to use this combo against something like Dragapult, but it is kind of nice to have it there as a possible option. And we do just need some sort of stadium bump in the deck, so I guess Gravity Mountain is the best one. I think a lot of the lists are also playing Iron Leaves EX. I played that in I think probably every game that I'm going to show in this video, but I never used it, and there was so many games when all I wanted in my hand was an Arven, so I just cut it for a 4th Arven. It seems like the 4th Arven is going to be better way more often than the Iron Leaves would be. I think it's mostly in there to just have a Pokemon based switching effect, and it can also knock out the grass weak Pokemon, I guess, but there really isn't that many in the format right now, so I just cut it. The supporter lineup in this deck is pretty straightforward. Just 4 Boss, 4 Arven, 4 Crispin, and 1 Iono. I really like the option of having at least 1 hand disruption card in every deck, so I definitely like the 1 Iono. That combined with like a Pikachu attack gives us a decent amount of comeback potential, so I definitely like keeping that in there. The 4 Boss, basically if we get the Joltik attack off turn 1, and we can, we're going to want a Boss basically every turn. And what I've been trying to do in a lot of my games is try to use Boss early and hold on to Prime Catcher, because then if our opponent Ionos our hand low at the end of the game, we'll usually have Mew EX and Fezandipiti on board to draw, and then we'll have so many outs in our deck to Gust effect, like our remaining Arven, the rest of our Boss's orders, and our Pokégears. And most of the time with this deck, we're gonna need some type of Gust effect to finish out the game. One thing that I think could be pretty helpful in this deck is a one of Night Stretcher. I have thought about switching the Super Rod for it. I don't think I've run into one situation yet where like I actually needed the Super Rod to win the game. There's been games where it's nice to have just so I can Crispin some extra energy in play, but I've never actually needed it. And a Night Stretcher could be really useful because a lot of the time we want to bench Pokemon early in this deck because there's not that much draw in the deck. So if we do something like bench our Bloodmoon early and put an energy on it and our opponent knocks it out, having a Night Stretcher to get it back could definitely be helpful. I do think probably the most important thing with this deck is knowing which attackers we're going to want to use for each matchup, and also the ability to be flexible with different attackers. Like there are games where Clefairy doesn't seem good, but it can get in there and take 2 prizes. So we always want to keep in mind what Pokemon we could possibly use to just take a 2-prize knockout. But most of the time against evolving decks, I tried to build up an Iron Hands and a Pikachu. That way we can Iron Hands their lower HP guys earlier in the game to take 2 prizes, and then use Pikachu to knock out their like stage 2 EXs. Against like the Raging Bolts, Goldengos and stuff like that, we're just going to want to build up multiple Pikachus. And in an ideal world, we would force them to hit into a Pikachu at least once so that we can get ahead in the prize trade, because that will stop them from taking a knockout that turn. And we'd really never have to worry about Monkey Dory with this deck against like a Goldengo, because we're not going to leave damage in play. So they should basically never be able to get around our Pikachu unless they do have like Vengeful Punch. I think some of them are playing. In those situations, we'd probably really just want to boss around the Goldengo that has it attached. But in certain situations, we can just hit into the Vengeful Punch. Like if we're going to be ahead in the prize trade, then that is just fine. And like I said earlier, this really is a deck that is just trying to prize race our opponent every single game. So as long as we're ahead in the prize trade, we would really like to have Latias, Fezandipiti, and Mew EX on our bench, because as long as we're ahead in the game, all we're trying to do is not get stuck by an Iono. So the more draw we have, the better. And then Latias makes it so that nothing can get trapped in the active spot, which is of course nice, unless they're using something like the Maractus or whatever it is. That card is pretty niche right now, so I don't know if I'd expect that. If it gets more popular, then maybe Iron Leaf should go back in the deck, and maybe even a switch card or a penny or something like that. But until then, I've been really liking this list. And the list that I originally started with did have 2 Bravery Charms. I noticed a lot of people playing the 1 Charm and the 1 EXP share, so I switched to that. The EXP share definitely hasn't been as impactful as I thought it would be. And with only 1 Bravery Charm, we're going to want to be a little more considerate about where we put it. Like in the mirror match, it can be really good on Bloodmoon Ursaluna to stop it from being one-shot by a Pikachu EX. And then against Dragapult, it can be good on the Clefairy, but it's going to be a little bit different for each game. Like sometimes we might want it on the Fezandipiti if we want to keep that in play real bad, or even our Latias if they're threatening to knock that out and stick something in the active. But if I'm putting the Clefairy in play early and I can, most of the time I'm going to put the Bravery Charm on that. But other than that, the deck is pretty straightforward. It's kind of nice. It's great for ranking up on the ladder. Quick games and not too much thought has to go into them, which is always nice. And a big shout out to the channel members. Thank you so much. And anyone that is a channel member or becomes a channel member can request any one meta deck once every set, and I will do kind of a video like this where it's not like a super in-depth guide, but I more generally go over it. The super in-depth guides just take way too much time, and I usually only do those on the decks that I'm playing at the time, because I do play like a ton of games with the decks to, you know, feel confident enough with the information to do that. But yeah, that is the list. Let's get into the games. So this game we're up against a pretty interesting Flareon deck. I started the Latias. Whenever I have that in my opening hand, I tend to start it, especially when I'm going second. There's been like quite a few games where I have like Latias and a Joltik in hand, and I've just been choosing to start the Latias. I don't want to get my only Joltik donked or anything weird like that. And if my opponent were to like play a Petron deck and I started my Joltik and a bench Pokemon and they knock that out and I'm forced to bench another Joltik, then they get 2 free prizes and then they're ahead in the prize trade, and that would not be ideal. I start off with the Pokégear here because I wanted to hit an Arven for Nest Ball. I didn't Vessel first because I wanted to leave the energy in the deck and have the option for the Vessel later in the game off an Arven. I don't know if that's necessarily correct or not. I was kind of overall fine with either like not getting the Arven because I Crispin and attach, and then I can attach next turn and knock out their Flareon if they evolve it. So this puts them in a really weird spot where now they have to really consider if they want to evolve up into a Flareon or not. And that's like the whole point of their deck, is to evolve and you know, get their energy and play with their first attack. But if they do that, they know that they're just getting one shot by a Pikachu. I don't know. I think they probably should, because I don't have anything set up after this Pikachu. Like, I can get up to 4 energy on it, like with Attach and Crispin this next turn, but that's about it. So I think they probably would be fine with evolving and attacking, or either way they can wait because they know that I'm not going to knock out their Eevee. So it's kind of like a weird stalemate-y kind of a spot that I've definitely had happen in quite a few games with this deck. Like when I played the mirror match a couple times, and we both just like sat there and didn't want to start attacking because neither one of us built up an Iron Hands. We started out with building up a Pikachu, which I don't know. I think that I probably should have just built up the Iron Hands first in that matchup, but that is not the one we're playing now. And I do top deck an Arven, and now I can just grab Miraidon for Iron Hands and Joltik. And now they're going to be forced to do something. Like, they really have no choice. This next turn, they're going to have to, get something going. I can retreat and Joltik 4 energy onto my Iron Hands. And I do attach the lightning to the Joltik, even though I need the lightning for the Pikachu. Because, like I was saying earlier, the lightning plus grass is like, it's just nice to have a lightning or a grass on the Joltik. So I do that, and I'm still holding on to the vessel. There's a lot of like Ionos to 2 late game where we need to find energy, so kind of holding on to that, maybe a little bit too much. There's also an argument to attach the EXP share to either my Iron Hands or my Pikachu that turn. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Like, I definitely want it on Pikachu. Like, I think the ideal setup in this matchup would be to get 6 energy on a Pikachu with also 4 energy on an Iron Hand. That just sounds ridiculous saying out loud, but like 6 energy on a Pikachu, 4 energy on a bench Iron Hands, and then take 4 with the Pikachu into Iron Handsing like the Monkey Dory. But yeah, they do just knock out my Joltik. And now I think this turn I can promote whatever, but I'm going to boss up the Monkey Dory and knock it out with the Iron Hands. And yeah, that is definitely a mistake. I should boss up the Eevee and knock it out with the Iron Hands. But that is not going to be what happens. I don't know why I thought knocking out the Monkey Dory would be better. Well, I do know why. I was thinking that the Rescue Board, just getting rid of their pivot would be nice. And I'm always nervous of this like imaginary way that my opponent is going to be able to put damage on their side of the board to move over with Monkey Dory. But I just don't think a card like that exists, even though when I'm playing these games in my head, I think there's some card that I don't know about. But yeah, I definitely 100% should have knocked up or bossed up the Eevee and knocked it out. I think I made a couple mistakes this game. That's like the main reason that I use this game when it's not really against a meta deck, or it's not against a meta deck. I guess like the Flareon Noctowl would be kind of a meta deck. But this is not that. This is quite a bit different. But my opponent does end up night stretching the Monkey Dory back for whatever reason. Maybe they think that there's like a world where I'm going to have to 2-shot through one of their Flareons, and they can then move the damage over to my Pikachu to knock it out. Like if I have to 2-shot through a Flareon with Iron Hands, that would be my guess as to what they were thinking. But yeah, I definitely should have just left their monkey, knocked out the Eevee. And I think in that situation, I almost never lose this game. I have boss Bloodmoon on the Fezandipiti to finish the game off, or knock out the Monkey Dory with Iron Hands. I kind of stumbled through my words there, but the whole point would be to make sure that there's always a Pokemon with less than 120 HP in play to knock out with my Iron Hands, so that they can't do a play like this. Like if they didn't bench that Monkey Dory, this play that they did would be so much better, because they'd be just leaving me with an Iron Hands, which would be pretty awkward for me. And they're only going down to 3 prizes, so my Bloodmoon's not really active yet. Yeah, I do end up attaching to the Pikachu again just to stop them from also knocking out, like just to stop them from knocking out my Iron Hands and stopping me from being able to attack. Now I can attack with Pikachu with just a Crispin, and I also Ultra Ball for Fez. Like I said in the intro, definitely like getting down the support Pokemon early in a deck like this. Or I think probably in most decks now, and unless you're playing a matchup where they can really take advantage of that. But Yeah, now they're in a weird spot where they really can't knock out my Pikachu, or they can't leave my Pikachu alive. If they knock out my Iron Hands, I move an energy to it. Like, yeah, I just basically win the game. But they do have the Pokemon League headquarters, which I completely forgot about. I knew that that was in the deck. I saw it on a mulligan, but I just wasn't thinking about it. We do have a stadium in the deck, and so I do have a few outs to winning, like attach energy to Iron Hands and Boss, or Stadium Boss with Iron Hands, anything like that. And this is like a win condition we wouldn't have if they didn't bench the Monkey Dory. So this game would have been a lot more awkward had they not done that. And we do top deck a Nest Ball here though, which is going to let me grab Mew EX, and I can draw an extra card. I'm definitely going to want to do. I think every card is pretty important at this point, and I also do definitely want to shuffle the deck, because I think Prime Catcher and Double Boss and Vessel was all in my hand before it got put to the bottom, so I was going to shuffle the deck first either way. But yeah, now I'm just thinning out the deck a little bit more. Well, thinning out my hand. I'm not going to pull anything out of the deck because I want to keep my hand low for next turn, so that I can draw with the Mew and then the Fez. And I also don't play the Gravity Mountain just in case they have like a second headquarters, but I do think I made a mistake last turn. I definitely should have hit into this Flareon for 160 with the arm press. I would have been able to do that because I had 4 energy on it, and I think that would have basically been checkmate. Like, I would have hit into it for 160. They're basically forced to retreat, or they kind of lose the game with my just like Bloodmoon attach. But yeah, I didn't do that. That was a big mistake. And now I just play out my hand, draw with Mew, and I'm going to Ultra Ball and pull a Pokemon out of my deck, so that just gives me a little better odds to hit either Boss, Arven, or Pokégear with my Fezandipiti. And we do end up hitting Boss. We had a lot, there's so many outs to Gus with this deck, so it's not like super surprising, but yeah, we end up winning that game. So this game we are up against a pretty interesting build of Gardevoir, and I might end up skipping the beginning part. As you can see, my hand is not the greatest in the world. I guess this is kind of the downside to playing a deck with 14 energy cards. This is probably one of the few games where I didn't get the turn 1 Joltik off. Like, I was getting it off quite consistently, and I don't think my opponent is really threatening anything here, so I just attach and pass. There's really no point of benching the Pikachu. Like, there's nothing good that's going to come from that. My opponent could potentially bring it into the active, so yeah, I just decide not to bench that. And this turn I'm probably going to bench it though, because I have to attach to it. There's no point in attaching to my Clefairy. I could attach to the Clefairy, do 40 damage, and it would do more damage to me than it would to my opponent, because he would move 30 onto my side and only have 10 damage remaining. And I don't think that the math is ever relevant there, because the Monkey Dory has a even number of hit points, so it's not gonna do anything good for me. And I do end up getting confused, which is a little bit awkward. I think that this turn I should attach to the Clefairy and Boss and just go for the heads flip. I am not entirely sure why I didn't do that at the time. I think it was a combination of, at first I thought that I wasn't doing enough damage to knock it out for some reason, and I thought that the 30 damage would be a little bit more impactful, but I don't think it would. I think I should have just bossed it up and tried to knock it out just to see what happens. Worst case, it does 30 to me, and then the best case, I get a prize, which taking the prize is nice, but it would probably be more about getting another card into my hand, because this hand is so awkward. And if this is a Guardy deck, which I don't know that I was 100% sure of at the time yet, there's always a chance that my opponent item locks me, so I'd really like to get into some supporters and stuff while I can to try and get my board going. But yeah, this turn I am going to boss up the Dunsparce without the charm and just go for the flip. Like, why not, right? If I flip tails and do 30 to myself, oh, the math does matter actually. That would make it so that the Monkey Dory could knock me out, but my hand is so bad I would probably just scoop the game. If I flip tails, there's really no point. And I don't want to wait till next turn to do that, because then I would be knocking myself out if I flip tails, and knocking myself out going into my opponent's turn would be super awkward. So I definitely don't want to do that. But now we do have a Nest Ball in hand, so next turn we can actually start playing the game. I can Nest Ball for Fez, draw 3 cards, and try and get into a Metal Energy. And we do top deck Miraidon, which is like really nice. Now I can put that in play. And I do have a bit of an awkward decision here of whether to use the Fez ability first or Miraidon for like Iron Hands Joltik. And I do just decide to go for that. I can attach the booster capsule to my Iron Hand so that it can't get trapped in the active. And I can evolve the Joltik next turn if I'm really worried about that. And even if they do knock it out with Monkey Dory, it's not that big of a deal because them going down to 3 prizes is not the same as them going down to 2. And we don't get the right energy initially off the Fez, but as you saw, I did Pokégear into a Crispin, so that is pretty nice. I'm just debating what energy to attach and where. I think I end up going with the grass onto the Joltik, because now next turn I do have an option to attack with the Galvantula, or a possibility to attack with it, or I can just hopefully like retreat into the Joltik and accelerate to Iron Hands. I don't know. I'm still not sure about that though. Maybe putting the Psychic on the Iron Hands would have been a little bit better. Then that would give me the potential to use Arm Press the next turn, but I don't know. I didn't think that that was like super relevant. And now I can possibly use the Galvantula to knock out this Monkey Dory. As you saw, I was just reading it, trying to figure out how much damage it did. I think I read it like a bunch of times in the game because I can't remember ever. I'm pretty sure it's 180 damage though to a Pokemon with an ability, which is a pretty solid number. It would be cool if it was 210 to knock out Fez, but 180 knocks out like Squawkabilly and Mew-EX, so it can definitely come up in a bunch of different situations. And now my opponent is finally getting some Ralts down, which they definitely had like several opportunities to put Ralts in play before this. I'm not too sure why they were choosing not to, but you know, we're here now. And I do get Iono'd, and now I'm going to get item locked, so that is a little bit awkward. We at least drew into an energy, which that's like the bare minimum that I wanted. We're in a decent spot to win the game. As long as they don't knock out my Iron Hands this next turn, I think that we're pretty good to win the game. Another thing they could do, of course, is bring up my Miraidon or Fez and try and lock that in the active for a little bit, or even my Pikachu. They could bring any of them up. But yeah, the plan now is just don't get the Iron Hands knocked out and use an Amphiberry much to take 2 prizes, and then finish off the game with Bloodmoon or even Galvantula or something like that. Or I guess Clefairy's in the discard pile now, but that's always like an attacker that we could build up in one turn with Crispin that can take prizes. We do get Iono'd again, which is fine overall. I mean, we can't use that vessel anyway, and it gets us closer to like an energy, if there even is one in the deck, or the Latias. That's like the main thing that I was hoping to draw into, was the Latias. If I had a chance to get that in play earlier, I think I would have. I might have had an Ultra Ball in one of my hands, but I for some reason didn't want to get rid of the cards that I had. So yeah, we do top deck Crispin, which is kind of lucky. We needed exactly like Crispin or the 1-of energy as a top deck, or I guess Arven. So we did have quite a few top decks. We could have Arven for like Rescue Board. And I'm debating here putting the Gravity Mountain in play, and just mostly to bump their Artisan to stop them from using the Dunsparce to draw and then re-benching a Dunsparce. But I don't think I end up putting that in play. I can't remember exactly why. I think I thought that there's like a world where, oh no, I do put it down. Sometimes I wish I skimmed through the games first, but I think there's a world where I thought that I was going to have to knock out the Gardevoir EX with the Pikachu, but that's just really unrealistic. So I probably should have just thrown that down. I don't think that they play a stadium that would be too damaging to my guys. Like they don't play headquarters or anything like that. I'm pretty sure it's just Artisan. They definitely could have put that in play, but if they don't disrupt my hand, I do have game. The only thing that could be awkward is if they knock out my Joltik with Monkey Dory, and and my Iron Hands. That could definitely get a little weird. Oh no, if they do that, they go down to 1 prize, and then I can use Blood Moon. So yeah, as long as they don't disrupt my hand, which I do believe they just researched, if I remember right, we're pretty much guaranteed to win. We can Ultra Ball for Galvantula and then boss up Monkey Dory or whatever. Or if they knock out my Iron Hands and my Joltik, then I can just Ultra Ball for Ursaluna, retreat whatever Pokemon I promote, and then boss up really anything on the bench and knock it out. But they do decide to attack with Gardevoir, so now they can't commit the monkey damage to the Joltik, so we are just gonna be able to win this game now. And I probably Ultra Ball here and read or no, I even Artisan first to read the Galvantula. Yeah, I wanted to make sure. I don't know why I'm like so worried that I'm just reading something wrong or misunderstanding something all the time. Yeah, we can just attach, evolve, and boss and win the game. Yeah, after playing quite a few games with this deck, and I'm definitely going to play more, I think it's in a pretty solid spot right now. It has answers to a lot of the meta, and sometimes just an Iron Hands alone can win us the game. Yeah, I wish I had one other good game with this deck. I stopped recording my games because I thought that I had like 5 really solid games, but watching them back, they definitely weren't as interesting as I thought they were. So yeah, hopefully y'all like the video, like or dislike, comment, and subscribe. Take care and have a good one.